So why should we be surprised? Ethnic Russians living in the eastern part of, well, now it's the Russia, but the Donetsk People's Republic that had a referendum, that they have made an agreement with the Minsk Agreement to be sovereign. Should it be anybody's surprise that Russia is involved in this? If you have followed this story back in 2014, and I am still waiting, everyone. Can someone show me when did the Ukraine, after forming a coup to out its leader in 2014, when did that election happen? Was it the next day? Was it the next week? Was it the next month? Oh, that's right. There was no an election. There was a person put in by the Western governments. There was no election. All I remember is Russian language was pretty much stripped from the country following a couple of weeks after that. But that's right. No election. You're being told your language cannot be spoken. And people are surprised Russia's involved here. I don't know.
Well, the Ukraine Twitter folks and all the forces of the collective West that are so invested in this proxy war on Russia will tell us, well, there was an election in 2019 and Mr. Zelensky, this guy was elected in. It's democracy now. Everything has changed. But the fact of the matter is I mean, for me, this just shows just such a willful ignorance. I mean, these forces are disingenuous. They're for war. They're the ones who are pushing the world on the brink of World War III with their support for this proxy war against Russia. But I think the fact that there isn't a massive collective response saying, hey, wait, we should correct the record here. There was a coup in 2014. The character of that government didn't change. Actually, what changed is the fact that that government continuously violated these Minsk agreements, as you said, and then held an election with absolutely no basis for changing policy. But Zelensky was elected to follow these agreements. That's what people forget, is that one of the reasons he did have some support was because he gave lip service to possibly a ceasefire, possibly getting back on that track. And not many people stood up and said, well, actually, how possible is that, given the fact that this government remains the same, that there had already been more than a 5-year process of normalizing fascism, normalizing far-right nationalism, normalizing a state of siege in East Ukraine. How likely is this, given that the United States, NATO, the EU has been so invested in using Ukraine as a pawn against Russia? And there just wasn't enough correcting that record so that when this all started to go down, we wouldn't be placed in the situation we're in now, where you have very few people out here where I sit actually reacting to this with anything other than, well, Russia's the problem, right? Or just complete and utter nihilism and anger about the fact that you have billions of dollars going to Ukraine and the situation economically only gets worse and worse and worse for the vast majority of people. I mean, the situation in Europe is arguably more severe, but in the United States, we actually come with a status of already being deindustrialized. So any kind of economic impact from this is still hitting people really, really, really hard, because there isn't even the social safety net that most of Europe enjoys. And there's been an inflation crisis caused by this proxy war, in large part, not only, but in large part by this proxy war, that isn't letting up. So you have a lot of anger about that, not a lot of understanding about the fact that, yes, this government that was installed in Ukraine has never ceased to be a puppet of the United States and the West.
Good point, Danny. Also, I want to bring up a point that I've brought up on other podcasts before. And this is Emily. She's made a quote. Watch Oliver Stone as a, watch the podcast with Oliver Stone as a guest on YouTube. He made a film about Maidan in 2014. Now, here's the interesting thing. I tried to get a copy of that a few years ago. I went to Apple. It was deleted. I went to YouTube. It was deleted. I went to Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, Amazon.ca. It was also deleted. This is a very, very strange occurrence that this documentary never saw the light of day, even though it's been out there for 8 or 9 years. Oliver Stone predicted this. He did heavy research about it. And here is a very credible, and I say that lightly, but a very credible producer coming out of Hollywood that makes amazing documentaries, that this film was silenced from the get-go. There's no way that this thing could have made any money because it pretty much wasn't allowed even in the theaters at the time. The drums were rolling many years ago, and they continue to roll. Here's another interesting comment here. Yep, no more Russians can speak their own language now because we no longer like it. Oh, and by the way, we're suspending your pensions now. Have a nice day. Peace. Yeah, I mean, I didn't form these opinions based off of Western media. I formed these opinions on having friends that live in the region, friends that report in the region, and absolutely being completely, really to the point where a lot of the Western media now, you just know what's coming out of them. You know it's orchestrated. You know what tomorrow is going. There's going to be a whole new story about this tomorrow. The Russians did it, or something. And when it gets jammed down the throat so much that people are just, really. I mean, Danny. How is it? I know in China here, people are concerned about the situation. They're worried about it. They're worried that how far can this be? They do know that there is a lot of support here, I would say, for diplomacy. Now, people may chuckle and say, well, that's kind of funny coming out of China. Well, this country hasn't been to war in almost 50 years. So, diplomacy, China's been saying, pushing diplomacy. And basically what the collective Western Europe is basically saying is, you know what, Russia, maybe you should go form an alliance with 1.4 billion people in Russia, 1.3 billion in India, and, the BRICS. Maybe you should go do that. And you know what? That's not a bad idea. That's about the best advice that I've seen come out of any American's mouth lately in regards to the situation. Politicians, that is.